Hello students, this video will go over step number 2 of your shaded geometry assignment. If you have not completed step 1, outlining 4 overlapping forms, please stop this video, go back, find that video and watch it. This video will cover how to shade a artwork using a range of 5 values from light to dark. With that, let's get into it. The two things I'm going to talk a lot about today are form and value. So form is that imaginary depiction of 3 dimensions in a work of art. And to do that, you take a shape and then you add shading to it and it becomes a form. Obviously in sculpture you don't need to shade because it already has a form automatically. So this pertains only to two-dimensional art, drawing, painting, etc. And then the other key thing that I'm going to talk about a lot is value. So value is that adjective that describes how light or dark something is. So typically in a still life or a painting or a portrait, it's going to have a range of values from very, very dark values to medium values to light values. So now the key thing to think about when you're working and when you're creating the illusion of form is always going to be number one thing, where is your light source coming from? So in these artworks, the light kind of moves around the objects a little bit. There's 2 things that you can look for to determine where that light is. The number one thing is where the shadow is being cast. The other key thing is where the highlight is, or the lightest part of the artwork. And if you draw a line kind of between those 2 things, it usually will point to where the light is. So if you take this shadow and you draw a line through here, the light is probably off to the side. If you take this shadow and you draw a line up, up, up through the lightest surface, so the shadow is somewhere up here. Now, there's 4 key vocabulary words when shading, but the key thing to always remember is where's the light and where is the highlight. So where's the darkest shadow and where is the highlight. So with that, let's get into our artwork. Again, if you haven't completed step number 1 of just drawing your 4 objects, please stop this video and come back once you've finished that drawing. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is on to the side of our paper somewhere. If there's room on the side, if there's room down here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 5 small boxes. 3, 4, and 5. Don't need to be precise. And now this is going to be my value scale. You can put dark on one side, light on the other, and then medium. It's up to you. You don't have to write that. But what I'm going to do with the side of my pencil, I'm going to start to press very, very, very hard and make small little oval motions to kind of create the darkest dark block. And then I'm going to switch and do the very light one. I'm going to press barely touching my paper. I'm like barely touching the paper. It's just like almost just like the weight of my pencil as I do this. And now in the middle, I'm going to try and find something that's halfway in between. So I'll start very lightly, and then I'll gradually build up pressure, pressing harder, 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 harder. Now that I've got something that's kind of in the middle, I'll just extend it up. So I've got light, medium, dark, and now I want to try and find a halfway point between these 2. So the easiest way to do this is to kind of match the light and then to gradually layer on top of that. So it's halfway between, so this is still too close. So I'll press a little harder. And now this one, I'll kind of match the medium shade. You can kind of see it's almost too identical. So then I'll press just a little harder to create 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps of value. Because then I will use those 5 values to shade my artwork. So the first thing to do when shading is to think about where the light is coming from. So now in this one, I'm going to put the light on this side. I demonstrated in the other in class to do it the other way. And I'll kind of just draw it. You don't have to draw where the light is. And what that means is if the light is over here, the shadows are coming out on the opposite side. So I can just kind of lightly kind of pencil in where the shadows are going to be. So I'm going to draw a line from the light to here. And the shadows are connected to the object. The key is that they're all, I'm going to have to imagine where the edges of that. And then imagine where the edges of this. There's a little shadow there. So I've got kind of roughly where the shadows are going to be. So now I'm going to start to go in, and I'm going to start with light, and I'm going to gradually press harder. So I will start on the side, whatever edge is facing away from the light. So this surface, I'll kind of start shading light, and then I'll gradually build up to like medium value. And I'm looking at my artwork and shading. So the key is that this is a flat surface, so I'm just using lines that go in one direction. For objects like cones, spheres, or cylinders, you want to use curved lines that kind of match the curve of the object. So I'm going to speed up the video, just go through and do all of the medium shades, which is the inside shadow around all of these objects. Meet you back here when I'm done with the medium shadow. Alright, so now that I've got the medium shadows for all of these, there's two things I want to point out before we move into starting to shade gradually lighter, lighter, lighter. If it is a square or a pyramid, it's going to be a solid value of medium and light. So for example, on this one, this surface is probably closer to the light, so this will probably be lightest. And this will probably be in between. But you do want to get, sometimes I like to just go over it medium style, like lightly, and then kind of go in and smooth it out. And now here I will press very, very, very lightly. So for squares, it's going to have 3 distinct areas. But for anything that is round, so spheres, cylinders, cones, it's actually going to fade kind of like a medium, and then it's going to fade to a little lighter, and now it's going to fade to very, very light. And then I'll kind of fix that wraparound feeling. And then it might just wrap around a tiny bit here. And I can make that blend a little smoother. I don't want to use my finger. I want to use a piece of newspaper or paper towel and just go in and do little kind of circular motions. If you do this blending with this kind of technique, the one thing that happens is the highlight kind of sometimes gets a little smudged. So you just got to go in and erase it out. I'm using like the corner of my eraser. The key here is that the highlight shape is a little oval, and the mid-tone, and then it gradually fades out. So I'm going to again go through, repeat that same process with the cone and cylinder, and we'll meet you back here for the final cast shadows and negative space. Alright, so we're back. I did kind of go over everything with the paper towel, you saw, but the one thing that tends to happen when you use a paper towel is you get kind of, it also softens the edges a little bit, so it is helpful to kind of go back around the edges of your artwork to kind of erase anywhere that the paper towel just over blended. Just be careful when you go like this. When you brush away, because you can also smear. The other thing I do want to point out is I almost like over smoothed, and I'm looking at my artwork, and there are areas where the two objects look like they overlap, but it almost like they blend together. So in these areas, so here, I'm going to actually add a little bit more of a darker shadow. Just around that shadow, this little area here where the cone goes behind the ball, this area especially where the square overlaps the cone. And then honestly, I feel like I need to make this, these two are very similar, so I feel like I need to just make this a little darker. And then I'll just kind of go in and lightly hit up those shadows, not over blending. So now that I've got my 4 surfaces, I just realized I didn't. I might want to also erase a little here to kind of bring that highlight back. I'm going to work on the cast shadows, and now this is where I want to go even up to 80 or 100% dark. So I'm going to really press hard to add those cast shadows. Obviously it's darkest directly underneath the object, and then it kind of fades to 90%. So it goes like 100 at first, and then it kind of just gets a little lighter. So again, I'm going to speed up the video as I add these cast shadows. See you back here. All right, so I feel like I'm in a good place. I've got all of my shadows. I've got a range from dark, medium, light. Each object has, clear, light, medium, and dark. And it's got this cast shadow, and all the shadows are pointing in the same direction, which is really great. So now the last thing to that I can do to help give this a little context, give it a little space, and really help to make it look like a unified piece of artwork is I'm going to shade the background. Now, I kind of want to find an area around. I'm going to kind of start by shading a middle gray around each object. So I'm just focused on the space behind. Yeah. So I'm going to focus on adding an outline first, and then I'll just kind of fill in that space. All right, we are finished. So I've just added a little bit of shading to the negative space, so the area around the objects. When you're finished with your artwork, please take a picture of it and attach it to the Google Classroom assignment for step number 2, the shaded still life or shaded geometric still life assignment. If you have any questions, please email me. We can set up a time to meet during office hours. I will invite you to office hours also on Thursday. Hope everybody is safe and well, and have a great day.